Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Russ Riesinger.
And I'm Jeanelle Slade. Montana's two U.S. senators weigh in on their impeachment votes.
They took to the floor today to explain their upcoming vote on whether to convict President Trump and remove him from office.
As you might guess, they had very different takes on the impeachment trial and will vote opposite each other.
Republican Senator Steve Daines spoke first and denounced the impeachment process as a nakedly partisan ploy by the Democrats to damage the president in the election. He called their case weak and said the president had not even been accused of committing a crime. Democratic Senator Jon Tester, however, said he will vote to convict the president.
He said House prosecutors had proven without a doubt that Trump abused his power by pressuring Ukraine to investigate political rivals and then obstructed Congress from investigating that conduct by preventing key Democrat documents or witnesses from being seen or heard. Now, oddly enough, both senators said the sanctity of U.S. elections lies at the heart of this case.
Montanans overwhelmingly oppose this impeachment. Montanans stand with President Trump. And supporting this impeachment means ignoring the voices of Montanans who voted for President Trump in the last election. And it means silencing Montanans who plan to vote for President Trump in the 2020 election.
If anybody in this country, especially the President of the United States, corrupts an election, and that's not an impeachable offense for the President of the United States, I don't know what is. Fair elections are a foundational issue for this country. And to corrupt our elections is something that we need to hold people accountable of if they've done it.
Well, the Senate scheduled to vote tomorrow on whether to convict the president.
A two-thirds vote is needed to convict, and that's not expected to happen.
On the eve of that Senate vote to remove him from office, President Trump will give the State of the Union address tonight.
He's expected to tout the economy and lay out priorities. You can watch it live here on Q2. That's tonight beginning at 7.
It's a day late, but the results are finally coming in from the Iowa caucus. The Iowa Democratic Party held off releasing the results last night after finding what it called inconsistencies. With 62% of the precincts reporting, and what is kind of a surprise, South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg is the leader with 26.9%. Bernie Sanders running a close second with 25.1%. After that, it's Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, and Amy Klobuchar. Again, these are still not final. 41 delegates are up for grabs in Iowa. Now, I talked to MSUB political science professor Dr. Jason Atkins today about the chaos surrounding the first presidential contest. He says it does take confidence away from the process, but he's not buying any conspiracies.
You read social media, you're going to find all sorts of conspiracies related to this. It comes down to poor organization and not prepared for a new way to report the results. It's not good. You know, it's the first contest of the presidential season, and not having it go right is going to put questions on, New Hampshire coming up, which is a little different since this is a primary state and is run by the state of New Hampshire. But the Nevada caucus is coming up in a few weeks. That's privately run, just like the Iowa caucuses are run.
President Trump easily won the Republican caucus in Iowa with 97% of the vote.
Well, it's a big day for the future of an historic Billings landmark.
Since 2018, planning has been underway for Colson Park. The park is named after the former town site of Colson, which collapsed in 1882 after the railroad passed it by. The 50-acre park has been left largely undeveloped. But today, the master plan is being unveiled to the public.
Q2's Mitch Laggy is standing by now in the Q2 newsroom to show us. Mitch.
Well, Russ and Jeanelle, the plan for Colson Park is a big one that is broken up into 8 different phases, and the city does not have the money to pay for them all at once. But phase 1 is in the city's sights. It includes the addition of 2 restrooms and redeveloping the current boat ramp. Phase 1 is using $110,000 in state grant money from the 2012 Exxon oil spill on the Yellowstone River. The Parks Department has identified a $250,000 grant that must be matched by private donations to pay for the remainder of Phase 1. And there are lots of fun features planned for Colson Park, including a section remembering the history of the site, a bike track, sculpture park, dog park, and a man-made lake in the center, among other amenities. The Parks Department has been taking feedback from the public as the design process moves forward. And there's still time for you to give the Parks Department your 2 cents.
But that doesn't mean that we still can't tweak it based on the community feedback. So You know, master plan is a guiding document on the development of the park. Until you actually get into what we call design and development, where you really tie down a lot of the unknowns.
And the designer told me it will likely be close to 10 years before Coulson is fully developed. As the city finds the funding, it can construct more and more of the park. And Whitaker said we could see Phase 1 under construction as early as the spring. The plans just have to be brought before the City Council on March 2nd. Russ and Jeanelle.
All right, thanks, Mitch.
Well, the Bureau of Business and Economic Research at the University of Montana has been touring the state with its 45th annual Economic Outlook series.
Now, the group presented in downtown Billings today, and Q2's Zoe Zandora was there to bring us the findings and the future of the Magic City.
This year, the focus is finding good workers and to examine the challenge of finding good workers for every kind of business and organization. Patrick Barkey, the University of Montana Business and Economic Research Director, says Billings is the most diverse and is the state's biggest economy and has put up a pretty good year of growth.
Core here in Billings that, again, it addresses that large regional geography. Clearly in physical products, that's very important. Billings is a super important transportation hub, very important warehousing, distribution, and so forth. And it's those kinds of industries that have been up and down. You have obviously the energy industry with the refineries here, and you have healthcare, which is a huge employer.
Bureau of Business and Economic Research economists presented national, state, and local economic forecasts and give their outlook for Montana's important sectors. And when it comes to real estate development, Barkey says Billings is a little more normal. He says the story of housing in Billings is pretty much the same as the state.
It's been disappointing how much home building there's been. There's been some push up in some of the multifamily and fallback, but the real increase in home building that we expected to see because of the run up in prices has not really occurred as much in Montana. There are signs towards the end of 19 that was starting to change. So the way I look at home building, that's kind of the wild card for growth. So if we finally see home building break out to where we thought it should be for the last 3 or 4 years, then I think it'll be a much better year for the economy in 2020.
In Billings, Zoe Zandora, MTN News.
Well, the next stop for the group is Bozeman, and they will end the tour on March 18th in Lewistown.
And now turning to weather with Chief Forecaster Bob McGuire. We had a little bit of winter on Sunday, but the main event is moving in.
As you might recall, Red Lodge ski area, 26 inches of snow.
Yes.
They're going to do that again. Oh, yeah. Let me show you what's going to happen. As you can see here, this Doppler radar shows you your next system already starting to make its way into northwestern Montana right now. It's going to follow the jet stream, and it looks like it's going to follow right on down the spine of the Rockies. So here's what's going to happen. Weather Services issued a bunch of winter storm watches, and as you can see, basically it starts over tonight at Missoula, about 5 to 9 inches of snow. Great Falls can see about maybe 6 to 12 inches of snow in the mountains, 3 to 6 in the valleys. Over in the Beartooths and also the Crazy Mountains, could see maybe 6 to 12 inches of snow in the foothills. 12 to 24 inches of snow. That's 1 to 2 feet in the mountains. And over there in the Bighorn Mountains, look for maybe 14 to 22 inches. And the Absaroka is about 18 to 22 inches of snow there. Here's how the whole thing's going to play out. The whole thing starts moving into our region by tomorrow morning. And then it looks like it kind of jumps over the Billings area. And then probably the next batch of snow moves in on Friday. We'll have more about that coming your way in a few more minutes.
All right, thanks so much, Bob. Well, if you'd like to weigh in on Montana's medical marijuana rules, now's the time to do it. The Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services has posted the new rules, which are set for a public hearing on February 20th. Now, the new rules would make several changes, including overhauling the fee structure and introducing a license structure based on providers' growing space. Now, the rule changes are intended to help implement a new medical marijuana law that the state legislature approved last year. One of the biggest changes in that law will remove the requirement that patients choose a single marijuana provider. DPHHS plans to implement that untethering later this year. MTN spoke with department leaders in November about the coming changes.
I feel like the program is still in a state of implementation and normalization, and so I'm continuing to work to make sure that we implement according to law and develop the program that gets the medicine in the hands of the people that need it.
Now, the public will be able to comment on the proposed rules until February 28th.
A warning tonight of a confirmed coyote sighting near Central Heights Elementary School on Billings West End.
Animal control officials spotted the coyote last night and notified Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks and Billings Police. Now, FWP's Bob Gibson stresses that coyote sightings are not surprising. He says if you do see a coyote, leave it alone, and it will most likely leave you alone.
However, Billings Public Schools officials urging parents to use caution while transporting students to and from school.
Well, there's more news from across our state on tonight's MTN 9 o'clock news. A Butte first responder honored for his life-saving actions. We'll tell you all about it. Join Russ for that and more on the MTN statewide news on the CW.
But first, still to come on tonight's 5:30 news, class in session. Montana high school students get a lesson in self-defense.
And in sports, Scott checks in with your Cats and Grizz on the basketball court with a big conference weekend coming up.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green. This is the 5:30 news on Q2, Montana's news leader.